Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Wendy Sechindi. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much. And if you're new to this channel, please don't forget to subscribe and also hit the notification button so that you're notified every time I post a new video. Also, please don't forget to like, comment, and also share. Let me know in the comment section what video you would like to see next. What would you like me to talk about? I would love to interact with my audience. Anyway, let's get into today's topic. I am going to share with you how my grandmother tricked me into going to the United States of America. Let's get into it. I'm going to give you a little bit about my background, how I grew up, how I was raised, where I used to stay, and how my grandmother tricked me into moving away from her and to the United States of America. Anyway, guys, let's get into this video. I was born and raised in East Africa, Uganda. My parents are not married or anything. So when I was born, we stayed at my grandma's hotel in Uganda. It's in a place called Kaboso. So when we stayed there for a short while, everything was good, I believe, but then they had their misunderstandings. So it's like they separated. And I went to go live with my mom and her grandmother in a nearby place, not so far away from where that hotel was. So we moved to that place. So growing up, my mother took care of me and her grandmother and her mother as well, who is my grandmother. So was living in that house. I was really pampered. I was taken like the kid that is. I was like the only kid there. So I was really pampered. I was given everything that I wanted. So my mom got a job at the airport. She used to work for an airline, but not necessarily a air hostess. I don't know what exactly she used to do there, but she used to work for an airline. So she used to go to the airport and work and always come back with goodies. Thank you, mommy. She used to come back with goodies for me. Everything I asked for, my mom literally gave it to me. So I grew up in that kind of life where I was babied. Everyone took me like the princess of the house. I always got what I wanted. But don't get me wrong, she's still an African mother. Do not cross an African mother. So every time I would do something wrong, my mother would not even bother like to go outside and look for a cane and beat you. If there is a sand or next there or a shoe or anything, she will pew, 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 hit you. We are groomed like that. That's how we are raised. So I stayed there with my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother in the same house. We literally had everything. So I remember my dad would come and visit me. My dad would come and always visit me, bring me stuff, and he really cared for me. And let me say that I never lacked anything. Everything I wanted, I got it. So my dad made sure my tuition was paid. Even though we weren't staying under the same roof with him, he always made sure things were done. Thank you, Daddy. So after some time, my mother decided to move to the United Kingdom for work. So she moved to the UK. She started working and earning. So when my mother left, my parents decided to move me back to my grandmother's house. So when I reached my grandmother's house, now I'm older. So now I can see and tell and understand what's going on. My aunties were there, my cousins were there at my grandma's hotel. So when I reached the hotel, I saw a very big building. At that time, it was a double-storied hotel. So I reached, when the first thing that came into my mind, I was like, my mother's been beating me. I've come to this big, beautiful place. I'm not going to allow these people to ever beat me. I don't know why that's the first thing that came into my mind, but that was it. So I started living with my grandmother. You guys, those people, my aunties, my cousins used to hold me, treat me like an egg. The baby became the baby. So I love that treatment like any other person. I love that treatment. So I enjoyed staying with my grandmother. So I got so used to her. I got used to the many people that we were living with at the hotel. So after some time, my grandma took me to a nice school that was nearby. They used to pack for me everything I wanted. I would go to school. Someone would take me to school. Someone would drive me to school. And then they pick me up in the evening. Sometimes my grandmother herself, I remember she used to have a Bluebird. I don't know if Bluebird still makes cars these days, but yeah, that's the car she used to drive. So we got so close. My grandmother loved me so much. Number one, because I was smart. Number two, I was a pretty girl. My grandma has a thing for light-skinned, cute babies. So yeah. So she loved me so much. She made sure I had everything I wanted. So when I was around primary 1, I moved to my dad's place with my aunties, now on my dad's side. So I stayed there. I used to go to a school there in Kabalagala. So in a place called Kabalagala. So I studied there for my primary 1. Then my primary 2, guys, I really moved. My childhood, I was always up and down. The number one thing I didn't have was staying in one place. So anyway, so I moved back to my grandma's place. But then this time they say you're not going to be a day scholar, you're going to boarding school. And I'm in like primary 2. I'm like 7 years old. So they take me to this primary school that is a boarding school, all the way like 45 minutes drive away in a place called Entebbe. So we went to that school. But the good thing, an uncle of mine, a brother to my dad, and my brother Jenkins, we went to that school. It was a boarding school. But the other boarding school, guys, it was so strict. They don't allow you to bring your food from outside. They don't allow you to bring your snacks from outside. Literally, you feed on that school food. They give you portion beans. You guys, remember, I'm used to the baby girl lifestyle. I'm used to being pampered. I'm used to being treated like a princess. And here I am in boarding school, suffering. So one day my grandmother came to visit us. She saw that I'd lost so much weight. I looked so sad. I looked so bad. She tried to sneak in some chocolate for me. I remember. She tried to sneak in some chocolate for me, and she snuck it in. But then she's like, you know what? That's the end of it. She's not going back to that school. So the next term, I studied in that school for only 1 term. So my grandma was like, no, you're going to another school. So I became a day scholar again. I went to a school where they would pick me. My grandmother would sometimes pick me up, or the driver would pick me up, or my uncle would pick me up. Uncle Robert would pick us up, me and my brother, from school, and then would go back home. So that was a bit better. So I was a bit happy. I knew I would go back home. They would do this for me, do that for me. And the only thing I had to do by myself is do my homework. That's it. So after some time, I think you see the closeness now with my grandmother. Everything grandma. So after that, in my primary 4, my grandma decides, now you're going to boarding school again. I'm like, okay. So they got me a good school. It's in Budo. It's called Budo Junior anyway. That's the name of the school. So they take me to Budo Junior, and I get used to the... First of all, I wasn't used to the treatment there. Why? You have to wake up early in the morning. Trot. They used to call it trot. You run around the school. I don't know what was the reason for all that, waking us so early in the morning just to go and run around. Like, it didn't make sense to me. But anyway, those were the rules, and I had to follow them. And then we had to do housework. I'm like, God, you sweep the compound, you mop the dormitory. In my head, I'm like, the school fees we pay. And isn't the school supposed to employ workers to do all that? But my dear, that school, they used to cane us. African schools, my dear, they will cane you very well. But anyway, I kept on studying, and I was excelling in school. Like I said earlier, I was privileged. My grandmother, my mother, my parents, my dad, sometimes I don't know who, but they always used to make sure that my tuition was always available. And whenever I was going to school, I had everything that I needed. So I never lacked anything. So after primary 7, I did my exams, my primary leaving exams, and then I passed. So my grandma got me a school. The school was okay. I went to different schools, but when I reached this school and I saw a swimming pool, you guys, the thing that attracted me to the school was the swimming pool. I was like, you know what? I'm not leaving this school. I used to love swimming. So my grandmother agreed anyway. They're like, oh, it's okay, you can come to this school. So I'd started studying in that school. But when I was in primary 4, I don't remember if I knew about it or anything, but I think I knew. I'm not really sure. They had started processing my papers to go to the United States. So meanwhile, all this time, I think I was telling my grandmother, I don't want to go to the United States. But this woman tricked me anyway. So I kept telling my grandmother, I don't want to go to the United States. But they started processing my papers when I was like in primary 4. Processed our papers. So senior 1, remember now I'm used to boarding school. I'm happy. I've made friends in school. One term, they come and pick me. My grandmother gives me the news, you're going to the United States. But this lady, grandma, did not tell me that I'm going for good. So my grandmother tricked me. She's like, you know what? You're going to see your dad. You're going to see your dad for a month. This is what this lady told me, a month. So I didn't bring my academic documents. I didn't bring anything. Me, I thought I was going as a visitor, and I come back and continue my life. Guys, I reached the United States. I remember our dad was given permission to come and pick us from the airport. No, from the airplane door. That's where he picked us from. That's where he picked us from. My brother and I reached there. In my head, I'm still thinking, I'm here only for a month. I'm here only for a month. I'm here only for a month. My dad had told us, don't bring anything. Don't bring clothes. Just bring this and this, like food stuff. Those days, it was easy to bring. I don't know if that's the situation now. My dad had told us not to bring anything, that he was going to do shopping for us. So I was also excited about seeing my dad, but I didn't want to stay in the US. Like, some of you may say, that is a privilege, that is a golden opportunity. My dear, I was not excited at all. So I stayed there. I stayed in the US. I stayed in the US for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Then my dad takes me to his friends. They were also Ugandan. So he takes me there, and then they were going to help me find a school. I'm like, what? I was so pissed. I was a minor. There's nothing I could do, you guys. So my dad asked me for my documents for school. I'm like, I didn't bring any documents for school because I thought I was visiting and going back. Meanwhile, all my friends are in Uganda. Everything I know is in Uganda. You guys, I was so depressed. Anyway, long story short, my dad called my grandmother, and then she had to send the papers, I think via DHL. So they sent my academic documents, and they enrolled me into a school. So I started school at a public high school, Homewood Philosopher High School. So that's where I went, and I started studying. But all this time, at the back of my mind, I'm like, how could my grandmother lie to me? How could she? Like, how could she? Guys, that is how I was stuck in the US for the next 2 years. So I know my dad was trying to do something like to change my quality of life, get maybe my citizenship in the US, get my green card, American passport, and all that stuff. But at that time, I'm a teenager. All those things didn't make sense to me. They didn't make sense to me. They didn't matter. All I wanted was to stay with my grandmother. And why? What made it easy for my grandmother to trick me? This part, I hadn't said it earlier. So I used to go when my mom moved to the UK, I used to go for holidays in the UK. At that time, I think my mom was staying in Barking. So I used to go for holidays. My mom would do shopping for me. I would come back with goodies. So almost every holiday, I think I went to the UK like twice. So I thought in my little head, I thought that's the same thing that's going to happen with America. I'm going to go for holidays and then come back. My dear, I was stuck in America for the next 2 years, but I adjusted slowly to the life. But still, I was like, I was missing home. I wasn't used to everything in America. I wasn't ready for that mentally, because I had something else in my head, and then something else was happening to me. So that adjustment was so hard for me. And that's how I lived in the US for the next 2 years. That's how my grandmother tricked me. Grandma. But I forgave her anyway, because I love her so much. She's family and she didn't mean any harm. Anyway, guys, that's a little bit about my life and how my grandmother tricked me into moving to the United States. Thank you for watching this video until the end. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share it with your loved ones, and also leave me a comment of what you'd love to hear next from me in the comment section. Guys, let's interact, please. All right, if you've not yet subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. That's all for today. God bless you and bye.